The sky above Zyphera glowed with a strange, soft violet light, streaked with wisps of shimmering clouds that moved like liquid silk. From her window in the royal palace, Princess Leora watched the horizon. She had grown up surrounded by grandeur, tall towers carved from crystal, gardens that bloomed with colors no human eye could fully name, and hallways that echoed with the whispers of history. But today, none of it felt comforting. The palace was alive with excitement, but it was the kind of excitement that pressed down on her chest, heavy and urgent. Her mother, Queen Thalira, had summoned her for a matter of great importance, one that had already filled the halls with tension. Leora had been aware of politics since she could walk, trained in diplomacy, history, and strategy, but this was different. The humans were coming. Humans. Fragile, short-lived, yet endlessly clever. The Queen had long admired their unpredictability. They could survive in ways the most disciplined alien races could not, and their ingenuity was legendary. To most of Zyphera, humans were oddities, creatures of instinct and emotion, but to the Queen, they were a tool, one she intended to use to secure her empire's future. Leora turned as the door opened, revealing the Queen in her full regal splendor. Her armor-like robes gleamed in shifting shades of blue and gold, and the crown upon her head reflected the light in patterns that danced across the walls. She moved with the grace of a predator and the precision of a ruler who expected nothing less than obedience. "Leora," the Queen said, her voice calm but firm, "it is time to understand your duty." She had studied their history, their technology, their culture from afar, but she had never imagined being forced into such a close bond with one. And marriage, an intimate, binding connection that her people treated with the utmost sanctity, was not a trivial matter. "Mother," she began, her voice steady though her mind raced, "I do not know if I can." Humans were unpredictable, yes, but they were also mortal, fragile in ways that Zyphera had never faced. She feared not for herself alone, but for what might come from joining their lives to hers. The Queen studied her daughter for a moment, then softened just slightly. "I know you doubt them, so did I once, but humans are not like us. They survive where we cannot. They adapt. They think differently. That is why we must have them as allies, and why you must be the bridge between our worlds." This was intimate, and it terrified her. Days later, the human ambassador arrived. Zyphera's palace, usually reserved and serene, buzzed with controlled chaos. Humans walked differently from the aliens, shoulders squared but movements less rigid, eyes flicking from one marvel to another with curiosity. Captain Elias Kane was no exception. He moved confidently, yet there was a gentleness in his gaze that seemed at odds with the grandeur surrounding him. Leora watched him from a distance, hidden behind the archways of the palace hall. He was taller than she expected, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to measure everything around him. There was an ease to his movements that the alien courtiers did not possess, a quiet confidence that spoke of someone used to surviving in difficult circumstances. Their first meeting was formal. They exchanged greetings in the ceremonial language of Zyphera, words filled with elegance and tradition, yet beneath the politeness, a subtle tension simmered. Leora noticed immediately that Elias was not like other humans she had studied. He listened carefully, asked questions that showed understanding, and did not seem intimidated by the palace or its expectations. "Princess Leora," he said, inclining his head slightly, "it is an honor to meet you. I have heard much about Zyphera and its people. I hope this alliance benefits both of us." There was respect in his eyes, but also curiosity, intelligence, and perhaps even a hint of humor. The next days were a blur of preparation, instruction, and observation. Leora was to be trained in the nuances of human culture, taught how to communicate with Elias in ways that would not offend him, and briefed on the political advantages of the alliance. She attended lessons on human history, language, and technology, realizing how much of their potential her mother had underestimated. Humans were fragile, yes, but they were clever, adaptive, and capable of feats that alien races often could not predict. One evening, alone in the palace gardens, Leora found herself thinking about Elias. He had saved one of the palace attendants from a misstep near a crystalline fountain, using quick thinking and calm hands. He had spoken gently to the frightened worker, and in that moment, Leora felt a strange flicker of admiration. Not fear, not obligation, but something else, an acknowledgement that humans, for all their differences, were capable of great courage and kindness. When she returned to her chambers, the queen was waiting. "I see you have observed him," Thalira said. Her tone was measured, but there was a trace of curiosity in her sharp eyes. "I have," Leora admitted. "He is capable, smarter than I expected. Humans are unpredictable, yes, but they are also strong in ways we often do not appreciate. You will learn from him, even as he learns from you." She had grown up surrounded by alien perfection, by beings who valued control, precision, and tradition above all else. Humans were messy, imperfect, and yet they were alive in a way that demanded respect. The day of the ceremonial meeting finally arrived. Leora walked through the grand hallways, her robes flowing behind her, her mind racing with the weight of expectation. Aliens and humans gathered, their faces a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and polite enthusiasm. The air thrummed with anticipation. When she entered the chamber where Elias waited, she felt the eyes of both species upon her. She could feel the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down, and yet there was something in Elias' gaze, a calm, steady confidence, that eased the tension slightly. He bowed, not with the exaggerated formality of Zyphra tradition, but with sincerity. "Princess Leora," he said, his voice carrying across the room, "it is an honor to meet you in person. I look forward to learning more." She did not yet know what this union would bring or how it would test her, but she sensed that everything she had learned, every skill she had honed, would be necessary in the days to come. As the formalities continued, Leora glanced at Elias. He was calm, attentive, and for reasons she could not yet name, inspiring. The humans had survived in ways her people could not imagine. They adapted, they learned, and they thrived in conditions that would break most others. Perhaps, she thought quietly, there was much she could learn from him as well. The ceremony concluded with a subtle nod from the queen, and the room slowly emptied. Leora remained, standing beside Elias, both of them caught in the quiet aftermath of expectation and tradition. Neither spoke at first, but the silence was not uncomfortable. It was charged with possibility. Finally, Leora broke the silence. "Captain Kane, I do not yet know what the future holds, but I do know that we will face it together. I do not intend to fail your people, or mine." The violet sky outside shimmered, reflecting the uncertainty and promise of what lay ahead. Leora took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. The path ahead would not be easy, but for the first time she felt a spark of confidence. With humans like Elias, perhaps the impossible was within reach. The queen had made her choice. Now it was time for Leora to make hers. The days following the ceremonial meeting were filled with lessons, observations, and cautious interaction. Leora had expected rigidity, endless formalities, and the usual alien discipline, but Elias Kane was nothing like she had imagined. He was careful, thoughtful, and attentive, yet he carried himself with the kind of quiet confidence that made people listen, even without words. Their lessons began early in the mornings, in chambers designed to educate the princess about human culture and diplomacy. At first, the lessons were formal. Leora studied maps of Earth, its nations, its cities, and its remarkable history of resilience. She learned about humanity's wars, inventions, and survival through adversity. The more she learned, the more she was struck by one undeniable fact. Humans were clever in ways her people often were not. Their adaptability, their ability to improvise under pressure, and their relentless curiosity made them dangerous allies, and potentially dangerous enemies. Elias was patient with her questions, answering each with clarity and a hint of humor that softened the stiffness of the palace halls. On Earth, he explained one morning as Leora traced her fingers over a holographic map, we don't always have the resources to follow a perfect plan. We improvise. We adapt. Sometimes that leads to failure, yes, but often it leads to something far better than we expected. Flexibility can save you. He noticed things others did not. A misalignment in the palace gardens that could cause flooding during Zyphera's rare storms, the fatigue of attendants who moved silently through the halls, the subtle inefficiencies in how the royal guards were stationed. He made small suggestions that improved efficiency and safety, always without overstepping the boundaries of protocol. One evening, as they walked through the gardens under the violet sky, Leora found herself asking a question she had not expected. Captain Kane, do humans always think this way? So, practical yet creative. We survive through adaptation. Both have value, but adaptation allows for unexpected outcomes, and often better ones. Their lessons were interrupted one afternoon by urgent news. The Queen had received intelligence of unrest in a nearby province, stirred by a rival alien faction that sought to challenge her rule and embarrass the royal family. It was a test of strategy, loyalty, and leadership, and the Queen expected Leora to observe carefully and learn. In the council chambers, Leora watched as her mother convened her advisors. Every word was measured, every gesture precise, yet there was tension beneath the calm surface. The rival faction had planted spies in the capital, intending to create chaos and disrupt the fragile alliance with humans. "Princess," the Queen said, her voice sharp, "observe closely. This is the way decisions are made. Every outcome is calculated. Every step ensures the safety of our empire." When the Queen's advisors debated strategies, Leora could see the predictability of their methods. Every suggestion followed centuries of precedent. And yet, none accounted for human unpredictability, for the kind of creative thinking that could turn disaster into advantage. Elias stepped forward quietly, his voice measured but confident. "If I may," he said, "we have an opportunity to act before the rival faction realizes we know of their plan. We can use a small, mobile team to intercept them, rather than waiting for a full deployment. It minimizes risk to civilians and prevents panic." It was bold, untested. Alien tradition would never consider such a direct, unconventional approach, but something in her mind resisted the urge to dismiss it entirely. She had seen humans do remarkable things, and Elias Kane had already proven himself careful, intelligent, and capable. "Explain," she said, her tone curious but controlled. Elias outlined a plan that used speed, stealth, and the element of surprise. Leora listened, astonished at the simplicity and effectiveness of his strategy. He combined human intuition with careful observation of Zyphera's terrain and resources. It was clever, unexpected, and risky, but the risk was calculated in a way her advisors had not considered. The Queen finally nodded. "Very well. We will proceed as you suggest." He moved with calm efficiency, speaking to soldiers and civilians alike, earning respect through action rather than command. She felt a strange admiration rising within her, a recognition that humans, fragile though they seemed, could achieve feats that even her people could not predict. After the operation, Leora found Elias alone in a quiet garden. He was tending to the injured, a skill he had learned quickly from observation and care, not from tradition or ceremony. "You saved many lives today," she said softly. Elias looked up, brushing a leaf from his sleeve. "It was not just me. Your people helped. And yes, humans can think differently, but we are not alone. Survival teaches cooperation. Your kind is not what I expected. You are clever, adaptive, and brave. I did not expect to respect a human so quickly." The human she had been forced to marry was no longer merely a representative of Earth or a tool of her mother's politics. He was someone she could learn from, someone whose presence challenged her, pushed her, and made her think differently. The Queen, however, noticed the change. From her private chamber, she observed the interactions between her daughter and Elias. The careful glances, the subtle nods of understanding, the quiet moments of shared insight, these were not signs of rebellion but of something else: connection. Thalira frowned, a mixture of doubt and curiosity twisting in her chest. She had forced this union for political reasons, believing she could control every outcome. But now, watching Leora learn from and respect a human, she realized she had underestimated the very creatures she sought to use as allies. The following days were filled with joint lessons, debates, and exercises. Leora and Elias worked together, blending human creativity with Zyphera discipline. They tested defensive strategies, solved logistical puzzles, and even trained in combat techniques, combining alien precision with human adaptability. Each exercise revealed strengths the other had not expected. Leora's respect for Elias deepened, and her own confidence grew. She saw in humans a resilience and cleverness that challenged the assumptions of her entire culture. Late one night, as they reviewed strategy in the observation tower overlooking the city, Leora spoke quietly. "Captain Kane, I see now why my mother chose this alliance. Humans are unpredictable, yes, but that unpredictability can be a strength. You think in ways my people cannot. You are clever, strong, and willing to adapt. Together, we can do more than either of our peoples could alone." The violet sky above shimmered, reflecting the quiet promise of new possibilities. Leora realized that while the alliance had been imposed, the future was still hers to shape. With Elias by her side, she felt ready to meet the challenges ahead. And somewhere deep in the palace, the queen watched, silently taking note of every moment. She had begun to understand that humans were not merely tools or pawns. They were clever, adaptable, and capable of inspiring even her own daughter. The seeds of change had been planted. Leora and Elias would face the trials ahead together, blending human ingenuity with alien discipline. The path would not be easy, but for the first time Leora felt that she and her people might emerge stronger than ever before. The morning on Zyphera dawned with a stillness that seemed almost unnatural. The violet sky glimmered faintly, the twin moons fading in the light of the rising suns. Leora stood at her balcony, her hands resting lightly on the railing, staring out at the city below. For days, everything had seemed calm, even peaceful, but the sense of unease that had been growing in her chest refused to dissipate. She knew that calm was often the precursor to chaos. Her instincts proved correct. The first warning came as a whisper, a scout returning from the outskirts, breathless and wide-eyed, reporting unusual movements near the northern province. A rival alien faction, known for their cunning and ambition, was gathering forces. Their intent was clear: to challenge the Queen's rule, destabilize the capital, and embarrass the royal family. The Queen summoned an emergency council. The chamber buzzed with tension as advisors, generals, and strategists pored over maps, holograms, and reports. Leora entered quietly, alongside Elias. Though she had grown accustomed to the palace's formalities, today she felt the weight of history pressing down. The fate of her people and the fragile alliance with humanity hung in the balance. The Queen's voice, cold and measured, filled the chamber. "They think to challenge Zyphera. They underestimate our strength, our strategy, and our intelligence. We will show them that such arrogance carries consequences." Yet Leora, watching Elias quietly observing the maps, realized that humans might see things differently. Elias stepped forward, calm and composed. "Your Majesty, Princess Leora, we have a chance to act before they reach the city. A small, mobile team could intercept their advance, using speed and precision rather than sheer numbers. We can prevent chaos, protect civilians, and minimize risk. The northern terrain has several narrow passes. They will move troops quickly through these routes, expecting minimal resistance. If we place a small team with advanced sensors and mobility units at key points, we can slow them, isolate them, and force them to reveal their positions. Then the main force can respond strategically rather than reactively. Leora, you will observe and assist where necessary. Captain Kane, You will lead the field team." Leora felt a thrill of fear and anticipation. This was no longer a controlled lesson. This was real. Elias moved with calm efficiency, giving concise commands that were clear without being overbearing. His human intuition guided the team through the terrain, predicting enemy movements, anticipating ambushes, and adapting in real time to unexpected challenges. Leora watched in awe. His approach was not just clever, it was alive, responsive, and flexible. Every decision accounted for unpredictability, something her people rarely considered. As they moved through a narrow mountain pass, scouts reported enemy positions. A small detachment of the rival faction had already taken positions, expecting to ambush Zyphera's forces. Elias quickly assessed the situation. "We will approach from above," he instructed, pointing to a less visible ridge. "Leora, you coordinate with the sensors to track their movement. The rest will flank from the ridge. Timing is critical." Her mind raced, processing Elias' plan and adjusting in real time to the movements of the rival faction. She felt a surge of respect, not only for his strategy but for the way he trusted her judgment, allowing her to contribute meaningfully rather than treating her as a bystander. The team advanced. The enemy was unaware of the ambush, moving confidently through the valley below. Then with a sudden signal from Elias, the flanking team descended from the ridge, cutting off escape routes and isolating the rival detachment. The plan unfolded perfectly, yet Elias was already anticipating potential complications. A hidden group emerged from behind a cluster of rocks, intending to outflank them. Elias noticed instantly. "Shift left." Leora marked the path. "We'll intercept." The maneuver was executed with precision, combining human ingenuity with Zyphera discipline. Leora's heart pounded as they confronted the enemy, forcing them to surrender without a full-scale battle. When the dust settled, Leora could hardly believe what she had witnessed. The rival faction had been neutralized efficiently, their plans foiled, and civilians remained safe. She realized that Elias' human thinking, the flexibility, the adaptability, the willingness to take calculated risks, had changed the outcome entirely. Returning to the palace, Leora found the queen waiting. Her eyes, usually sharp and unyielding, softened slightly. She had witnessed the operation from a secure observation point and could not deny the brilliance of Elias' approach. She felt a quiet stir of doubt about her previous judgments regarding humans. Perhaps she had underestimated them, not just as allies but as thinkers capable of reshaping her empire's strategies. "Princess Leora," the queen said finally, her tone measured, "it seems your human companion has skills worth noting. His approach, different from ours, proved effective. I respect him for it." That night, Leora and Elias walked through the palace gardens under the twin moons. The air was cool, filled with the scent of exotic flowers, and the silence was broken only by the gentle trickle of water from crystalline fountains. "You handled yourself well today," Elias said, breaking the quiet. "You adapted quickly, coordinated effectively." "I am impressed. That combination is rare, even among humans." The next days were filled with continued lessons and exercises, but Leora noticed subtle changes in the palace. Advisors who once dismissed human ideas now asked for Elias' input. Soldiers who had scoffed at his methods now followed his guidance. Even the queen, though she did not openly acknowledge it, began to observe him with a new measure of consideration. One afternoon, during a review of strategic maps, Leora spoke. "Captain Kane, do you believe humans could integrate fully with a species like Zyphera? Could we learn to combine our strengths effectively? But if we respect each other's strengths and learn from one another, the possibilities are remarkable. Adaptation is key. And I see that in you, Princess. You are willing to adapt, to think differently, and to lead in ways your culture has not always encouraged. Respect, yes, but more than that, a recognition that humans, fragile as they seemed, could achieve what her people often could not. They could improvise, inspire, and adapt under pressure. and in that realization she felt a spark of hope for the future. Meanwhile, the queen watched from her chambers, quietly taking note. She had forced this union for political reasons, believing she could control every outcome. But now, seeing her daughter and the human ambassador working together, she understood that she had underestimated them both. Humanity was clever, adaptable, and capable of inspiring loyalty and courage, even in the heart of an empire built on perfection. The violet sky stretched above the palace, reflecting the tension and promise of the days to come. Leora and Elias stood side by side, ready to face challenges together. The enemy was defeated for now, but the galaxy remained vast, filled with threats, opportunities, and tests of ingenuity. For the first time, Leora understood that the forced alliance was not a burden alone. It was a chance for learning, growth, and proving that humans were more than fragile creatures. They were clever, adaptable, and capable of greatness that even the most disciplined alien civilizations had not anticipated. And somewhere deep in her heart she felt a quiet certainty. Together, they could face whatever the future held and perhaps reshape not only their worlds but the galaxy itself. The capital of Zyphera had recovered from the recent attack, but the sense of unease lingered. The violet skies shimmered faintly, reflecting the city's tension. Princess Leora walked through the palace gardens, her mind restless. Though the enemy had been defeated, the events of the past days weighed heavily on her. She realized how much she had changed, how her understanding of humans and their ways had deepened. The human ambassador, Captain Elias Kane, had proven not only clever and adaptive but also courageous, inspiring her in ways she had never expected. The queen, Thalira, watched her daughter from a distance, her mind troubled. She had forced this union for political reasons, believing it would strengthen her empire. But now, seeing the respect and trust growing between Leora and Elias, the queen felt a stirring of doubt. Had she misjudged humans? Had she misjudged her daughter? The realization was uncomfortable, almost painful. She had always prided herself on her control and foresight, yet these humans were teaching her lessons she had never anticipated. Leora approached Elias, who was examining strategic maps in the courtyard. He looked up and smiled, a calm, reassuring presence in the midst of uncertainty. "Princess," he said, "I've been thinking about the next steps. The rival faction may recover. They may attempt another strike. We need to prepare, not just defend. Your methods, they work, but they also require trust and cooperation, which is not easy to achieve here. That is what I have learned from humans and from observing you." She suggested modifications to troop deployments, communication networks, and supply lines, ideas that her people might have dismissed as reckless, but Elias encouraged. Days later, news arrived that confirmed their fears. The rival faction was regrouping, and this time their attack would be coordinated across multiple provinces. The queen convened an emergency council, her presence commanding silence. Advisors presented plans based on conventional strategies, massed armies, fortified defenses, and strict adherence to tradition. But Leora and Elias knew that such rigidity would not be enough. The enemy would exploit predictable movements, strike at weak points, and test the limits of Zyphera's control. Elias stepped forward. "We need to act differently. A flexible, mobile response team can intercept their movements, gather intelligence, and force the enemy to react to us. If we combine human adaptability with your people's precision, we can control the battlefield without unnecessary losses. And you believe this will succeed? You may proceed." Princess Leora assisted Captain Kane. Shadows moved across the northern plains, figures advancing with caution but determination. Leora's heart raced, but she kept her focus. She had learned to anticipate movements, to read patterns, and to act decisively. Elia's calm guidance reinforced her confidence. The mobile teams moved through hidden passes, using human-inspired tactics that confused the enemy. Leora directed sensors and communication units, tracking the enemy's movements and relaying information to the field teams. Every maneuver was calculated, yet flexible, adapting to the enemy's responses. The rival faction struck at the city's outskirts, expecting chaos. Instead, they were met with coordinated resistance, human-inspired strategies that leveraged surprise, mobility, and precision. Leora watched as soldiers executed complex maneuvers she had suggested, each step forcing the enemy to reconsider their plans. At one critical moment, a group of enemy scouts attempted to flank the city. Leora noticed immediately, her training and observation guiding her actions. Elias, they are trying to circle the East Ridge. We need to intercept now. Move the rapid response unit. I'll coordinate with the main forces. Timing is crucial. Leora felt a thrill of pride. This was not just a victory of force, but of intelligence, adaptability, and teamwork. As the battle continued, Leora and Elias worked seamlessly together. Their combined leadership inspired both humans and Sci-fi soldiers. Troops who had once been skeptical of human methods now followed their guidance without hesitation. Leora realized that true leadership was not about imposing authority, but about earning respect through competence and trust. By nightfall, the enemy had been repelled, their forces scattered and demoralized. The city remained intact, and casualties were minimal. Leora and Elias stood on a high balcony, surveying the aftermath. The violet sky above reflected the quiet triumph, a reminder that adaptability and intelligence had prevailed over brute force. The queen entered silently, observing the scene. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes revealed a mixture of awe and regret. She had forced this marriage for political reasons, believing she could control every outcome. Yet now she saw the truth. Humans were clever, adaptable, and capable of inspiring loyalty and courage. And her daughter, working alongside Elias, had proven that collaboration between species could achieve results far beyond what tradition alone could accomplish. "Princess Leora," the queen said finally, her voice soft but firm, "it seems I underestimated the value of your human ally. You have both shown remarkable skill and judgment." For the first time, she acknowledged that she had misjudged both humans and her daughter's ability to embrace new ideas. The realization was uncomfortable but necessary. She had begun to see that rigid control could be limiting, and that strength came in many forms, not just precision, tradition, or numbers. In the days that followed, Leora and Elias continued to train, strategize, and strengthen the alliance. They worked to integrate human-inspired tactics with Sci-fi discipline, teaching soldiers to adapt quickly, anticipate challenges, and trust their leaders. The palace, once rigid and hierarchical, began to hum with a new energy, a blend of tradition and innovation, alien precision and human creativity. One evening, as they reviewed maps and intelligence reports, Leora spoke quietly. "Captain Kane, do you think humans and Sci-fi can truly work together, not just in war but in peace, in governance, in culture?" "It will not be easy. Differences will cause conflict, misunderstandings, and tension. But if we respect each other's strengths, learn from one another, and adapt, I believe it is possible. I see that in you, Princess. You are willing to lead differently, to embrace change, and to inspire others." Respect had grown into trust, and trust into something stronger, an understanding that humans, despite their fragility, possessed qualities her people often lacked: adaptability, intuition, and the courage to act when circumstances demanded. The queen watched from her chambers, quietly reflecting. She had forced this marriage for political advantage, believing she could control every outcome. Yet now, seeing her daughter's growing confidence and the undeniable skill of Captain Kane, she felt the first stirrings of regret. She had underestimated the humans. She had underestimated her daughter. The violet sky stretched above Sci-fi, shimmering with the promise of change. The city was safe, the enemy repelled, and new possibilities lay ahead. Leora and Elias stood together, ready to face whatever challenges awaited, their combined strengths forging a path that neither could have walked alone. For the queen, the lesson was clear. Control alone was not enough. Strength came in unexpected forms, and sometimes the most valuable allies were those she had once dismissed. Humanity, fragile yet clever, had proven its worth. And her daughter, learning and growing alongside a human, had become a symbol of hope, adaptability, and the potential for unity between worlds. The palace was quiet, but the energy of transformation filled the air. Leora knew that more challenges would come, more tests of courage and intellect. But for the first time, she felt truly ready. With Elias by her side, she could face the unknown, confident that together, they could overcome any obstacle. And somewhere deep within, the queen acknowledged her mistake, silently admitting that she had misjudged both humans and the potential for her daughter to rise above tradition, embrace change, and lead her people into a future brighter than she had ever imagined. The stars above Zyphera shimmered with quiet promise. Change was coming, and humanity, clever, adaptable, and resilient, would play a role far greater than anyone had expected. The palace of Zyphera was alive with tension, but not the frantic energy of battle. It was a different kind of anticipation, the kind that comes before a decisive moment in history. Princess Leora stood in the central hall, her eyes scanning the assembled leaders from across the empire. Delegates from distant provinces, human ambassadors, and military commanders all gathered under the high crystalline dome. Today would be a test not of war, but of diplomacy, strategy, and the unity that had been forged through recent trials. Captain Elias Kane stood beside her, calm and attentive. He had spent months observing Zyphera, learning its strengths, its weaknesses, and its rigid traditions. But he had also taught the people, and Leora, that adaptability, creativity, and courage could complement precision and discipline. Together, they had trained troops, thwarted enemy attacks, and proven that humans were more than fragile outsiders. They were partners, capable of shaping outcomes that even the most powerful alien factions could not predict. The queen, Thalira, entered the hall with her usual commanding presence. Yet today, her gaze lingered on Leora and Elias longer than usual. There was a quiet acknowledgement in her expression, a realization that the path she had imposed on her daughter had yielded unexpected and remarkable results. "Princess Leora," the queen began, her voice carrying through the chamber, "the challenges we have faced in recent months have tested our empire, our traditions, and our judgment. But they have also shown us the value of partnership, adaptability, and courage." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "It seems I misjudged the humans and perhaps I underestimated my daughter. Our people have learned to work together, combining our strengths to overcome challenges we could not face alone. Zyphera has these qualities, and combined with human ingenuity, the possibilities are limitless." Before the council could respond, a messenger arrived with urgent news. Another rival faction, emboldened by previous defeats, had gathered forces on the outskirts of a key province. This time, their plan was more complex, designed to test both military strategy and diplomatic influence. The council members reacted with predictable concern, proposing massive troop movements and strict defensive measures. Elias stepped forward. "We can approach this differently. Using small, mobile units and intelligence gathered from previous encounters, we can anticipate their actions, disrupt their plans, and minimize casualties. If we combine human adaptability with Zyphera precision, we can achieve not only defense, but also a strategic advantage." Leora moved swiftly through the city, overseeing troop placements, coordinating communication channels, and adjusting strategies in real time. Her confidence had grown immensely. She was no longer a passive observer of human ingenuity. She was an active participant, blending human strategy with Zyphera discipline. Elias led the field teams with calm authority. His approach was methodical yet flexible, allowing for adjustments as the enemy revealed themselves. The rival faction expected chaos and indecision, but instead, they encountered precision, anticipation, and coordinated action that left them scrambling. Leora monitored the battlefield, directing units to key positions, intercepting potential ambushes, and ensuring civilians remained safe. Her ability to combine human-style adaptability with Zyphera protocols impressed even the most skeptical commanders. Troops who had once doubted the human ambassador now followed his and Leora's guidance without hesitation, inspired by the effectiveness of their leadership. During a critical moment, a large enemy detachment attempted to outflank the city. Leora quickly assessed the situation and relayed instructions to Elias. "They are moving toward the eastern ridge. We need to intercept before they reach the city gates." The enemy detachment was intercepted, their communications disrupted, and their advance halted. The combination of human intuition and Zyphera precision created an overwhelming advantage. For the first time, the rival faction realized that they were facing a force that could anticipate and counter their every move. As the sun rose higher, the battle concluded with minimal casualties. The enemy forces retreated, demoralized and disorganized, leaving Zyphera unscathed. The city erupted in celebration, not only for the victory but for the remarkable demonstration of cooperation and strategy. The queen observed from her chambers, quietly reflecting. She had forced this marriage for political reasons, believing she could control every outcome. Yet now she saw the truth. Humans were clever, adaptable, and capable of inspiring loyalty and courage. And her daughter, working alongside Elias, had proven that collaboration between species could achieve results far beyond what tradition alone could accomplish. Later that evening, the queen approached Leora privately in the palace gardens. The violet sky stretched above, dotted with stars that reflected the quiet triumph of the day. "Leora," she said softly, her tone uncharacteristically gentle, "I must admit I was wrong. I underestimated both humans and you. The alliance, this partnership, has shown me that strength is not only in tradition or control, but in adaptability, trust, and courage. You have proven that you are more capable than I ever imagined. Then I must trust that the future will be brighter, guided by your leadership and by the courage of those who think differently. Humans have earned their place here, and so have you, my daughter." Humans were recognized as true partners, respected not for their physical strength but for their ingenuity, courage, and ability to adapt. Leora and Elias became symbols of unity, showing that collaboration across species could overcome even the most complex challenges. Together, they worked to reform traditional practices, integrating human-style adaptability with Zyphera precision. Troops were trained to anticipate challenges, think creatively, and respond effectively. Diplomats learned the value of flexibility in negotiations, and the citizens of Zyphera began to appreciate the qualities that humans brought to their world. One evening, Leora and Elias walked through the palace gardens, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The stars shimmered above, reflecting the promise of a future shaped by cooperation, respect, and shared vision. "I never imagined it would come to this," Leora said quietly. "I thought this alliance would be purely political, forced by my mother's decisions, but it has become something more. They are built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. You've embraced that, princess. You've shown that leadership is not about control, but about inspiring others to achieve what they thought impossible. We are capable of more than others often believe." She had forced this marriage, believing it would serve her empire's interests. But now she understood that the greatest victories come not from control or rigid tradition, but from cooperation, respect, and the courage to embrace change. She had misjudged humans, misjudged her daughter, and in doing so had learned lessons she would never forget. The palace, once filled with tension and expectation, now hummed with a sense of possibility. Leora and Elias stood together, symbols of a future where humans and Zyphera worked as partners, facing challenges and opportunities together. The rival factions had been defeated, the empire strengthened, and humanity had earned lasting respect among the stars. As night fell over Zyphera, the violet skies deepening to indigo, Leora felt a sense of purpose she had never known. She had grown beyond the expectations imposed upon her, learning from Elias, leading with courage, and embracing change. Humanity had proven its value, and she had discovered the strength within herself to guide her people into a new era. The queen approached quietly, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "You have made me proud, Leora. More than that, you have shown me the power of trust, courage, and adaptability. I see now that the future is not just in my hands, but in yours, and in the hands of those who dare to think differently. Humans, Zyphera, and all who stand with us, our strength lies in unity, creativity, and courage." And in that moment, under the twin moons and the violet skies of Zyphera, a new chapter began, one of hope, cooperation, and the triumph of human ingenuity. The queen's regret had turned into admiration, Leora's leadership had been proven, and humanity had truly earned its place in the cosmos. The future was theirs to shape together.